All right. Hello, my name is Tess Granick, and I'm here today with Kim McKenzie, and we are your research data and scholarly communications librarians at UMass Chan Medical School. We'll be doing a deep dive into the Citation Manager's Endnote and Zotero today, and feel free at any point to ask questions in the chat, and we'll answer them at the end of each section that we're going through today. And we are also going to be recording today's talk, and the recording along with the slides will be made available on our seminar series webpage. And I'm just going to throw a link to that in the chat. You may have found this seminar there in the first place. So the learning objectives for today's session is that we hope that you'll come away with an understanding of the purpose of a citation manager, understand the features of Endnote and Zotero, how to import citations into Endnote and Zotero, and then how to add those citations into a document using Endnote and Zotero. So to accomplish that first goal, citation managers are lifesavers. And when it comes to research and writing, because they can help keep track of the literature and resources you found and already have all the citation style details built into them. So you're not doing all that finicky formatting for each individual citation when inserting citations into a document. So they're also known as citation managers or bibliographic managers. And so you'll see that we use these terms interchangeably. And some of them come with additional features like plugin to insert in-paper citations, being able to attach full text PDFs to a citation and be able to organize those, as well as being able to share a reference library with collaborators. And we mentioned that it's useful for organizing literature you found and formatting citations, but it also makes it easier to change the citation style when needed for submitting to different journals. But we always recommend that you check the style guide before you submit to either a journal or to a grant to make sure that it is still complying with that style guide and style, because the citations that come out of Citation Manager are only so good as the information that is provided to a citation manager. So if there was a typo in the database where you pulled the citation from, or sometimes proper nouns, it doesn't always capitalize correctly, those are things that you might want to look out for. So quick question. What reference managers do you currently use or have you used in the past? And now Kim's just going to put up a quick poll, but if you are choosing other, we would like to know what other ones you have used in the past, and feel free to type that in the chat. So I'm just going to give a few minutes here. All right, it looks like almost everybody has responded. And if you want to go ahead and share those results, thanks, Kim. So it looks like most people have used Endnote before, and some people have used Mendeley and Zotero, and one person has used RefWorks. So that's great to see. So, and the two that we're going to be talking today, Endnote and Zotero. Zotero has a lot of similarities to Mendeley. So if you are a Mendeley user, you'll find it very comparable. So that gets us into what the citation manager is going to be covering today, which are Endnote and Zotero. So we've given you some of the basic features that both of them have and how they sort of compare. Just a quick rundown, both Endnote and Zotero have a desktop and sort of web-based option, and they also have plugins that both work with Word. Zotero has the extra advantage of having a plugin that works with Google Docs. So if that's something that you use in your work, that might be a good option for you. They both have easy ways to add references and have ways to find full text. You can share libraries as a group, and Endnote has the ability to annotate and highlight PDFs, while Zotero is a freemium option. So that means that regardless of which institution or where you are at in your career, you can always use Zotero because it's open source as well. And we've also linked on this page to some of the tutorials we've created for both of these products. Now, these are not the only citation managers that we support in the library. We also support RefWorks and Mendeley. So RefWorks is a subscription-based product as well, and it's web-based, and it has a plugin that works for Word and Google Docs. But what we found, it only has generally one way to add references that works consistently. But it does have a browser plugin and a folder sharing option as well. And Mendeley, very similar to Zotero, has both that desktop and web-based, and it has a plugin that works with Word and easy to add references in several different ways, as well as creating groups for citations. Again, another freemium product. And you can annotate and highlight PDFs. But one of the difficulties is that it's really hard to export those PDFs. So if you're wanting to share those amongst your researcher with somebody else that's maybe not in your shared library, that's a little bit more complicated. All right, so now we're going to transition to just sort of a quick demo of Zotero and Endnote, just to get you a flavor of what these two citation managers are like. And then we're going to transition, and Kim and I are going to go into separate breakout rooms to go more in depth into both of these products. But we thought we would give you sort of a general overview of some of the features. So with Zotero, and that's where we're going to start, I mentioned that it has both a desktop and a web-based platform. So this is the desktop platform. And then this is the web-based platform. They look very similar. They have the folders on the left-hand side, the main screen with all your citations. And then when you click on a particular citation that you're interested in, it'll bring up the citation details on the right-hand side that you could click in to edit as you would like. And something that I like about Zotero is their plugin. So when you are on a page that has citation information, you can click the plugin and it'll save to Zotero. And this you can get for most web browsers. I'm using Chrome, but they have one for Safari and Explorer as well. So as you noticed, or as I mentioned, the Zotero has a folder option, but it also has tags for sorting. So if that's your preferred sorting method, as well as Zotero also has a find available PDF feature. So if you're in Tool, you can find the PDF if you would like. As well as a nice feature in Zotero is it has a retraction tracking as well. So you'll notice that this big red bar, it has picked up that I have an article that has been retracted in my collections here. And so it has given me this big red bar at the top so I can go see what the new item is that has been retracted. But also within the collection itself, it is showing these red X's and giving me this notice. So if you are doing some literature searching and then you come back to it later to when you're writing up the article, this is just a good way so that you can see if the item has been retracted. It also has the ability to create shared libraries. These appear both in the online as well as the desktop version of the platform, and you can add in your citations to it. And it has a Word and Google Docs plugin. So I'm just going to quickly show what the Word plugin looks like. It's on the Zotero tab here. You can add and edit citations. First, you choose your style that you're interested in. And then when you want to type, you just type in whatever citation you are interested in, and you can type in any component of the citation, whether it's a title or even a keyword, and select your citation and insert it. And when it comes to insert the bibliography, edit the bibliography. And that's just a little bit of a teaser in Zotero. We'll go into more on how to actually use it in the breakout rooms. And now I'm going to pass it over to Kim to give us a little teaser of Endnote.
Okay, so there we go. Thank you, Tess. So let me just share my screen real quick and chat. So this is what the desktop version of Endnote looks like. Again, it's like Zotero, it has a desktop and a online version. And you can sync between the two of them, but you can only sync one library at a time. So that's one way that Endnote and Zotero differ. You can have multiple libraries within Endnote. So it would be, if you had more than one library open, you could have more than one of these windows. And that's entirely up to you how you like to work with your references. Some people might have one library for everything, put all of their references in there. Other people might want to have a separate library depending on what project they're working on. For this is one little library I have that I use for demonstration purposes. Since it is just all reference list here, but you can also organize within a library by creating different groups. And these groups can also be shared with other people. If you right click on this, you can see you can create groups, smart groups. And then if I'm double clicking on this one or right clicking on this one, it gives me the option of sharing that group with other people. You can also share a full library with somebody else by coming up here. For this, you have to sync your Endnote desktop and your online libraries, which is why you can only share one library at a time. So it looks here fairly similar to what Zotero looks like. You've got sort of the organization information on the left-hand side, and then each of your references here. You'll see when I choose one, the citation information is shown up in this box. You can also attach PDFs. This one doesn't have a PDF attached to it. Thought I had a PDF attached here. I apologize for that. But if there was a PDF attached, it would show up right here in this box, and you can make notes on that PDF. And if you want to add a PDF, if you have it saved on your desktop, you can use this little paperclip to go and find it. There is also a find full text feature, which you can do. It's not working, but there is a this button here. Work for me? There we go. If I wanted to go and find if there was a free full text version of that paper, I could click that and it would go and search the internet and see if they could find it. And then I'll just share real quick what it looks like in Word. Nope, open the wrong slide. There we go. So just like Tess just showed you with Zotero, I have Zotero here too. When you download Endnote, it's going to add a tab to your Word documents. And then you can easily insert citations. You can choose what style of citation you would like. And that's a handy feature because you can go and change that after the fact. If you have it in one, then you can, and you need it in a different one, you can just do that by choosing whatever it is that you need. And I'll go into what all of these different choices mean in more detail in our breakout room. So, okay. Tess, do you wanna, I'll stop sharing here and.
Great. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms, and so that was a quick teaser. We went through it really fast just to give you a brief overview. And so hopefully you've sort of gotten a feel of both of them and can decide which breakout room you'll want to go into, where we're going to go into these a little bit slower paced, as well as go into a little bit more depth, as well as if you have any particular questions about Zotero or Endnote, that's where you'll want to ask them.
So welcome to Endnote. I'm going to take you through some slides to introduce you to getting started with Endnote, talking about some different ways to add items and to use the program, and finally a little bit more about how to use it with Word. And I'm using slides here instead of doing a further live demo so that I can send you these slides with notes on them for your future reference. Now, Tess showed this page a minute ago, but showing it to you one more time, our scientific and scholarly writing resource guide. This is where you can get the link to download Endnote if you haven't already. We're not going to do that today, but if you have any questions about while you're trying to download that, you can definitely get in contact with me. The other library contact for Endnote is Tori Rossetti. So you saw in the quick demo I showed before that there was a library. And what you see when you first open the Endnote, when you first download it, can be a little confusing because what you get is this blank gray screen. Because to get started, you have to manually create a new library, which you can do by choosing File and New. And this creates a new library that you can name whatever you like. So here I'm naming it just Test for Class. Like I said before, you can create libraries for specific projects or just have one big library where you save anything and then you create groups to organize your citations. That's entirely up to you. But when you create a library, you get two files that are associated with it. And I'm bringing this up because this ENL file, which is the EndNote library, and then this folder, which is the data folder, they have to stay together in the same location on your computer. So right now I have them all in the documents folder. If for some reason you wanted to move that, you just have to remember to make sure to move them both. Otherwise, that will cause problems. On Macs, I think you can zip them together. I don't use Macs, and so I'm not positive about that, but I believe I have heard that's something that you can do. All right. So once you do that, you get a shiny new library, which again, I've named Test for Class. And because I don't like having the window float around like that, what you can do is just dock it with the main window. And this looks very similar to what I showed you before in that quick demo in the main room. There's just nothing in here yet. Before we start adding, one thing you want to do is to define your terms list. So you do this for every library you create because it brings in those citation styles that are used by different journals so that Endnote has them ready for use. You choose Tools and Define Terms List. And then from this pop-up, you choose Journals and Import List. And then you'll choose, it will give you these different choices. You choose whichever topic seems closest to what you might need. Here I'm choosing medical. And you can add more than one. But when you choose medical and click open, this is going to populate your EndNote library with all of these different journal citation styles. So when you're creating a bibliography later on, you can choose what style you need. You can, again, add more than one list here. And if you ever find that you need others that you can't seem to find, it's really easy to just Google EndNote style and the journal that you're looking for, and you can usually find what you need. So since it's easier to show you how to use the features of EndNote once there are items in the library, what we're going to do is start by looking at PubMed to show you some different ways to add items. I'm using PubMed as the example database, but pretty much every database you come across will allow you to send items to your citation manager. The process is usually pretty similar, maybe just a little different. So we have a results list here in PubMed, and you can then do a few different things to get some of the citations that you want into your citation manager. Here, I'm just clicking off some of these items that I'm interested in, and then I can just decide I'm going to send these. So I'll click Send to Citation Manager, and a message is going to pop up asking if you want to send the selections that you made. Like I just made 3 selections on this page. Do I want to just send those 3? Do I want to send all of the results on the page? Or do I want to send the full result list to my citation manager? So that's, again, entirely up to you, but I would not recommend sending 52,000 references to a citation manager at once. But you then click Create File, and it will automatically download an NBIB file. And this is just the file format that will come out of PubMed. Oh, I see there's a question. Do you want to ask it now?
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe we should wait till the end because the question I wanted to ask is from the beginning. You know, the part when you said that you click onto the tools and then you click up to define search terms. I was wondering what next you go to.
So here,
how do you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So you click on the when you click on the define terms list, this will pop up. And you can then use journals and then import list.
Okay.
And then this is going to bring up another box where you make your choice of what topic you're most interested in. So I chose medical. And then when I choose that, it's going to import all of those automatically.
So does it mean that when you import it in this format, it's going to, is that, you know, like some journals tell you that they want this particular format.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get those formats? Is it in this same way?
That's what's being pulled into Endnote here, all the information on those different styles.
Okay.
And then when you're in Word, when you're actually creating your document, you'll be able to choose what type of format that you are interested in.
Okay, got you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, so we have selected some items. We've created the NBIB file. And then the easiest way to get this file into Endnote is to just double click on it here at the bottom of the browser page, because that will automatically add those items to your library. So everybody uses PubMed slightly differently. If I'm doing a search, you know, as a kind of a first pass, something I like to do is to send items that I think are interesting to a clipboard. You know, just looking through the titles, maybe a quick look at the abstract, send them to the clipboard, and then go back through them again once I've done, once I've gotten a nice selection. So once you have sent items to a clipboard, if you've never done that before, you will then see an option to see your clipboard underneath. So I should say what I did was select a couple here, I clicked send to clipboard, and now you can see I've started to add things there. Your clipboard is going to look like very much like a results list. It is important to remember, if you haven't used this feature before, is that it doesn't get saved. So once you close out of your PubMed session, you will lose the information in your clipboard. And in a second, I'll show you a different way that you can collect items. It's a little more permanent. But from your clipboard, you can again just choose the items that you're interested in, click send to Citation Manager, and it will create that NBIB file. So a collection is what I was just talking about. That's a slightly more permanent way to collect items. And so to use collections, you need a MyNCBI account, which is also a useful thing to have if you haven't already signed up for one. We do recommend that. You'll see there's a login button up here that is for a MyNCBI account. And so if you didn't have one, you would get prompted to create one. And so this is what your MyNCBI dashboard looks like. And you'll see that I have some collections right here. And so if you are searching for a particular project, or if there's, you know, part of your dissertation research, you know, you're going to want to keep a running collection of items, you can do that in a collection and then send items from your collection to the citation manager. So if I was looking at one of these, this is a research writing collection. You'll see again, it looks very much like a results list. You can choose which items you want, and again, choose send to citation manager, just as we've done before. And finally, you know, I did say there were 4 ways I was going to show you to get citations from PubMed. If you are looking at one particular article and you just want that article to be imported into your citation manager, there is a cite button on every article page that you can click. It gives you the citation information that you could actually just copy and paste if you needed it for something. You can do that in different formats with this little dropdown. But you can also download it as an NBIB file and then upload it into your citation manager. All right. So back into Endnote, let me just ask, were there any questions before I jump back into what it looks like in PubMed, or I'm sorry, in Endnote? Okay. Okay, so as you are double clicking on those NBIB files that you have created, the citations are going to get added directly to your library. Newly imported references are going to show up here under imported references. They'll only be listed here until you import the next NBIB file, but everything that you import is collected in your all references section. So this is the main part of your library. I did say that there are other databases that will allow you to download citation information. I'm going to just show you very quickly what one other database looks like. I know a lot of people do use Google Scholar, and you can do this in Google Scholar. If you are just looking at a list of results from your search, there are these little quote mark buttons under each. You can choose that and then choose to download for an EndNote. There is no way to kind of do that checkbox and collect multiple items in Google Scholar unless you have a profile. If you have a profile, you can send items to your profile and then star them, like press these little stars, see how these are chosen, this one isn't. And then go to this download button. It gives you the option to download to EndNote. All right. Okay, so that is Google Scholar. What am I going to show next? Okay. So that's how you can download new citations stuff as you're searching. If you already have files on your computer, you can also add them to EndNote by going to File and Import, and you see it gives you the choice of file or folder. If you choose File, then you're going to get asked to find it on your computer and import it. And when you import a PDF, EndNote is going to extract the metadata. That's the information that's stored within the PDF file to fill out one of these citation information boxes. So it will try to pull in as much information as it can. So you import a file, press import. You can also do this with a folder. So if you had a whole folder full of PDFs that you wanted to add into EndNote, you could also choose the folder and it would do that same thing for each one. It would try to pull in as much information about each of them as possible.
I have a quick question. Sorry. Sure. If you have, let's say, a PDF that's already downloaded in your computer and you did the import thing that you just recently showed to extract the citation, will you be able to open the PDF directly from EndNote?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If you have added, if you've added a PDF, if you've saved it, then it's going to show up over here as an attached PDF.
I see. But if you if you do download the citation from, let's say, PubMed, do you have to manually add the article as well if you want it attached to that citation?
Yes. So you would have to have access to the PDF in order to get that attached.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, where was I? Oh, you can also manually create a record, a citation record. And you might need to do this if you are citing a web page, maybe, or a newspaper article, something that you didn't find in PubMed, say. What you can do is click on this little button with the plus sign, and you can choose what type of citation you're adding from this drop-down menu. And this is helpful because it will give you potentially different choices of information to fill in based on what type of citation you're adding. And then you can just fill in the different fields with as much information as you have. And if you're doing this manually, it's important to remember that the citation will then only be as complete as you make it. So as much information as you can include here will make the process easier when you're trying to use that citation in a bibliography. All right, so we're now going to move on to working with the EndNote library. I know I am going a little bit fast, but are there any other questions before we jump into kind of what you can do within EndNote now that there's papers in there? Looks like the chat is empty. Okay. All right. So there's a couple of really nice features that will make your life easier within Endnote, aside from just being a great place to collect your references. It will help you find duplicate records, because that does happen. If you're doing different searches, you might forget that you've got one in there already, and that can just clutter up your space. And it can also make it a little bit difficult when you are trying to add citations to a document, because if there are multiple records, things could get confusing, and you might end up with duplicate citations in your document. So to find duplicates, you go to References and then just choose Find Duplicates. And then it will search through, it will find which are duplicated, and it will ask you which record do you want to keep. And if you have the choice, it's always best to choose the one that has whichever one has most information in it, if there's a difference, or most citation information. So that can be very helpful. You can also, if you need to edit within a particular citation, Tess mentioned when she said that you should always just kind of check before you send in a paper, just check over the style formats. Occasionally you might find a typo, or if you added this manually, maybe you made a typo. But to edit a record once you have already put it in there, you just go over here to the right side and you can click on each of these different topics and make whatever changes that you need to. It's important to do any kind of edits here and not in a Word document, because if you make a change, say in the reference list in a Word document, that change isn't going to get made within the Endnote library. And so you might lose that fix if you don't make it here in the library. Okay, and so we had a question about what PDFs look like. Once the PDF is attached to the record, you can look at the whole thing right here. You see there's a button here, you can make it bigger. There's a way that you can make notes within this PDF. If you don't have a PDF, I'm sorry, let me say first, if you have a PDF saved on your computer, you found the citation from PubMed, you want to add the PDF. If it's on your computer, you can then just use this paper clip to go in and get that PDF. You select what file you want to link to that reference. If you don't have the PDF yet, Endnote does have a way of searching the internet for a free version of that paper. So you can use this little magnifying glass that will go out, search online to see if there's a freely accessible PDF. If it doesn't find the PDF, but it finds a URL, it will tell you that they found a URL and they added the URL right here to the citation information. This is only going to be marginally helpful if what you were looking for is the PDF, because this URL is not through the library, which means it's not attached to our subscriptions, which means if you click on that link, you'll likely hit a paywall. So if you do get to this point and you're looking for the PDF, it's good to then go use your library access in order to try to get a free version. Take a quick breath here. How does one sync Endnote libraries when working on more than one computer? I'll show you that in just a second. Good question. All right, so I touched on this a little bit in the introduction already, but there are different ways to organize your items in Endnote. For example, you can create a new library for every project if you wanted to, or you can create groups, a group for each paper that you're working on, make sure the references are in there, and you can keep them all together. And then you can share those groups with other people. So once you have a group set up, you can decide to share the group. You can also, I don't think there's a limit to how many people that you share to the group. just thought of that. I meant to look that up. But you know, however many authors you might be working on, you could share a group. But to do this, you do need to sync your desktop library with your online Endnote account, which there are a couple of places that you can do that. There's this configure sync button here. There is a sync button up here. You can also share a full synced library with somebody else. If you want the whole thing to go to someone rather than just a group of citations, you can do that. But this requires just a bit of thinking about how many different people you're trying to share with, because you can only sync one library at a time. So I have multiple libraries. This one I'm just having a test library. So I would not sync this one to my online library because, you know, if I wanted to have access to my full library on any other computer, then I would want to make sure that's the one that I am syncing. So I hope that answered the question that was in the chat. There is one other way to share a full library if you aren't going to be updating it together, or if you just want to, you have a bunch of citations and you want to send it to somebody else. You can download the whole library as this under file compressed library.enlx file. So if you choose that, you'll get a couple of choices. Do you want to create it? Do you want to create it and email it? What do you want in this library to be, or what do you want to be included in this file? And one thing to definitely think about is, do you want to attach the PDFs, or do you want to keep those PDFs off and just send the citations? So I say to keep that in mind, just because downloading a file with a lot of PDFs attached can be a much bigger file than just the citation information. All right, so again, that was fast. I think there's one question in the chat. Oh, nope, that was just a thank you. So I'm going to go into working with Word. Are there any questions about anything I just showed you before I jump in there? Okay. Nope. Okay, great. So let's take a look at working with Endnote in Word. I showed you this before, that when you install Endnote, it should automatically connect with Word and put in this little tab here. Excuse me, I'm just gonna take a sec. And so first thing I want to point out is this handy drop down where you can change the style. And this is getting back to the question that was asked before. Where do all of those terms, go? How do you use those? This would be where they would show up. You see, I've only got a few listed here, but you can select another style, and every style that you have imported is saved in this select another style. So if you wanted to send in a paper to Cell, for example, there would be a choice for Cell. If you were sending it to JAMA, there's a choice for JAMA. And again, if there's a style that you come across that you need that doesn't seem to be included, there are ways to go about finding it. Just Google. And this is really, like I said before, I think what really makes this using a citation manager, whether it's Endnote or Zotero or RefWorks or whatever you're using, this is so helpful if you are working on a paper. It needs one style for one submission. Maybe that one doesn't work out. You need to send it somewhere else. You don't have to go in by hand and change all of the styles. You can just say, do this for me. It saves quite a bit of time. So to insert a citation, you want to put the cursor wherever it is that you want the citation to go, and then click on the Insert Citation button. And when you do that, it's going to give you a box where you can type in information like the author's last name. That's typically what I would use. Highlight the reference you want, since there could be multiple. in the list here. I just happened to choose a name that I only had one reference for. You click Insert. I will also point out that it shows you some of that citation information down here that could help you make sure that you're looking at the right one. Once you click Insert, it puts in the in-text citation in whatever format you have it set to. And it also adds in the full citation to the end of your document. So you are starting your full reference list as you're writing. Now, there are a couple of little, I think they're little quirky things, but if you are trying to share your paper with someone else and you want to remove the connection between your Word document and your EndNote library, you can do that. You just choose to convert the citations and bibliography, and you convert it to unformatted citations, which is then going to just give you some placeholder citations. Sometimes if you have a document connected to your library and you send it to somebody else, those citations are going to look a little strange. It won't be as clean to read. So you can make that conversion. Then when you are ready to work on it again, when they send it back to you, give you some notes, you can turn your instant formatting back on, and you'll see it's back to what it looked like before. And then when you're ready to hand in an assignment, or if you're submitting an article, you'll want to disconnect that document again, but you want it then to keep all the formatting. Because remember, the in-text citation looked a lot different when I was with what I showed you before. So if you are ready to submit this manuscript, what you need to do is convert it to plain text, which this is now disconnected, this item. It's disconnected from my EndNote library, but it all looks the same. It didn't take away any of that formatting. But before you convert it to plain text, always make a copy of your file, because once you have converted it, you can't change it back. And so if you ever want to revisit an article, say to reformat it to submit to another journal, you're going to want to have a version that's still connected to EndNote. Okay, so that was our quick trip through EndNote. If you have questions now, we can try to answer them. I'm always an email away. If any issues come up, you can definitely ask. And I have lost my chat. There it is. It doesn't look like there are any questions. So does anybody want to ask anything? Because I know we've got a couple of minutes before Tess will call us back. Okay. So again, you will have this recording. Tess is also recording in her part of the session, so you'll be able to go and listen to what Zotero is like if you are interested in that. And we will also send out slides, so you'll have all of these slides with notes on them to help you remember how to use the different features we talked about.
I did see a question about which reference manager is better, and it is only a matter of personal preference, really, and what you need for your research. Both of them have web and desktop versions, so it has that ability. Do you foresee yourself? The one thing with EndNote is that it is a licensed product that we have a subscription to here at UMass Medical School. But if you move to a different organization, they might not have EndNote. And so it's just a matter of, you might have that on your personal desktop, which is great, but if you get a new computer, then you would lose access to that product. So some things to keep in mind. But without further ado, I'm going to jump into a larger demonstration of Zotero. And all right, everything looks good. So if you do have any questions about Zotero, feel free to type them in the chat and we'll get started. Now, if you are wanting to follow along with me today, if I convinced you that Zotero is the way to go and you want to download it right now, I'm putting a link to the download in the chat. So to download Zotero, you're going to want to go to zotero.org and you'll see this big download button. And the link that I put in the chat goes directly to this download page. Now it should sense, what platform what operating system you're using for your computer. And so it'll automatically try and guess that, oh, since I'm using Windows, that I want to download the Windows version. But you can see that it does have other platforms below that you can download if you wish, as well as, since I'm using Chrome, it's automatically detected that I probably want the Chrome connector, but it does have connectors for other browsers as well. So is there anybody who'd like me to pause right now so that they can download it? You can use the react buttons to let me know, or in the chat. All right. Not hearing anything, I'm gonna move forward. So as I mentioned, there is both the desktop library, which when you're on zotero.org, wherever you see a web library, that's how you get to access the online library. And there's a desktop version as well. So it's important to, and how you keep those two connected is by syncing them. And that is done on the desktop side by using this green circle arrow to sync items. And this is important because the different ways that you import citations is going to determine where the citation shows up first, whether it's going to be in your web library or your desktop library first. And so one of the common ways that I like to import citations is directly from a database like PubMed. So I've created this public collection here in PubMed if you would like to follow along and just have some ones for examples. So one of the easiest ways that I find is using the send to citation manager. And that's going to create a PubMed citation file. So I'm choosing all results on this page, create file, and it's creating this NBIB file down here. Now I can go in and add this NBIB file to either my online library or to my Zotero library. And I'm just going to go to add it. I can either use this green button here to bring in a file, or I'm going to go to File, Import, and you'll notice that it's automatically selects from a file, which is correct. Next, and then it's in my downloads, and I'm going to import. Now, the way that Zotero imports is that you can choose that if you're going to have it go into a new collection, or if you just want it to go into where I have open right now. So yes, that is a good question in the chat, and I'll get to that in a minute. So I'm going to go next, and all 5 were imported. You notice that my collection has grown here, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is using the web importer, which I mentioned earlier. So this button up here is going to change depending on what style of web page that you're on. And so right now it's indicating that there's a number of citations. But if I go to an individual page, for example, it's going to change, the icon changes. And so that's like a nice tip that it's picking up a different file type. And so by clicking on it, I can choose where I want it to save to. So I have a lot of folders. I'm going to switch it to the SOT1 ALS presentation that I had earlier. And you can add in tags right here as well. And I can press done, and it will add it as well. And whenever you're using the web importer, it's going to automatically add it to your web library. So that means that you need to do a sync to get it to appear in your library on your desktop. So, there in the chat, there was a question about, can you click and drag a PDF from Finder directly into the app? And the answer is yes. So if you have a PDF on your computer, whether it's in Finder or just in another folder, you can take that PDF, drag it directly into where you want it to go, and it'll automatically add it. And it's going to try and find as much of the citation information that it can pull from that, extract from that PDF. But it's always good to check to see if that information is correct. It's actually looking pretty good for this one, which is nice to see. You can also use an identification number like a DOI or a PMID to pull in a citation to Zotero. And you can do this for either on the web version or the desktop version. So I'm going to go ahead and use I'm going to use the PMID from this article that I have here. And I'm going to put it into the web version this time, just to give you an example. And so I'm going to go back to that same library that I've been working out of. And you use this sort of like wand icon. And it's the same icon that you see in the desktop version as well. And then you just type in the number that you're interested in, or the URL or ISBN. You see like all these options that it has right here, and then press enter, and it has automatically brought it in for me. And it brought in all that information that it has found as well. Of course, there's going to be items that it's like not on the web, for example, like maybe a book, or and that maybe the book doesn't have an ISBN, or maybe it's a PDF report on somebody's web page that you just need to create a citation for and you want it to do all that formatting for you. Don't worry, you can still add items manually if you wish. So the web-based version just has sort of like a short list of different manual options that you can upload. If you click more, then you can get the full. It's the same for the desktop. You just click this plus button, and you'll notice that there's sort of a short list, and then you have more, and you can have a whole range of options for how you want to import or that information or input that information manually. For example, if I was doing a book, it sort of brings up this blank metadata on the right-hand side, blank information, and I can just type in whatever I need to. So for example, I found a book on SOD1 and ALS, current research. This is not a real book. And then I would add in the author's information, perhaps like an abstract, et cetera, as much information as I needed for the citation. So I'm going to pause for a minute if you would like to take a time to add a citation to your Zotero library using one of the methods. And I see that there is a question about where the PDFs actually stored. And what about if you share the library or individual papers with someone else? So if you're syncing your Zotero library to your desktop, then they're all going to be stored in the cloud if you are permitting it to sync your PDFs. And the same goes for shared libraries as well, if you're sharing them with somebody else. But if you're not syncing the full text, you'll notice that it creates a folder on your desktop or where Zotero is located, so that you can that has your PDFs. So I'm going to get to the notes in just a minute, so hold that question. So I hope everybody's had a chance to look at and try their hand at adding a citation to Zotero. So as I mentioned during my brief sort of teaser, you can organize your citations in a couple of different ways. So you can either create folders, which I've done on the left-hand side here. To do that, it's just the plus folder icon to create a new collection. And then you would type in the name of your collection and press OK. So for example, just type S1 and ALS paper 2, example, that's OK. And now I've added a new folder. Now, if I want to bring items into that folder, I would click on the ones that I'm interested in. So say, for example, I just want this one. I would click and drag it over into my paper 2, and then it would add it. You can also, to add multiple items, if you're on a PC, the shortcut for that is I'm going to click on the first one that I'm interested in. Say I'm interested in, like, actually, I just want to bring over all these, maybe not these two at the bottom. I could click on the top item, press shift, and then click the rest, and that's going to highlight all of them. So that way, when I'm moving things over, just to be a little bit slower about it, it'll bring it all automatically over to the new folder that you're interested in. So the other way that you can organize is using tags. And tags, as I mentioned, are located down here. So you can sort by them and see which ones are being used. But the way that I like to use them is I'm going to unclick it to see all of my items again, is that if there's a particular ones that I want to tag for my purposes, tags are located on the top here. And I can go ahead and add a tag. So maybe I want to make a note to myself, like these are papers that I have that maybe they were recommended by someone. So maybe I want to add a recommended tag, or I want to keep track of who found the article for me. That way I could find it in there. And so if I just wanted to see the articles that were recommended, I'm just going to add a recommended tag to another one. Some tags are added automatically based on the database that you're pulling from, such as these ones here were brought in, I believe, from PubMed. And these, you can remove these as you would like, but they can also be useful in your search as well and keeping your literature organized. So if I just wanted to see the ones that were recommended, I could scroll through, it's listed alphabetically. But if I wanted to just like quickly see, also something to keep in mind with tags is that you have to spell them correctly. Because otherwise it creates duplicates. But that is tags in a nutshell. So I'm going to pause for a minute if you would like to go ahead and create a folder or add a tag to one of your articles. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to do that. So there was a question in the chat about, can you write your own notes about the PDF or mark up the PDF, such as using a highlighter or text within Zotero? And will those notes or markups be shared with others? So to answer part of the question, as far as I know, so Zotero does have a notes feature, which by clicking on an article, you might have noticed when I was putting in tags, it has a notes feature here that you can add notes to that citation. And it has you can do all sorts of text editing to those types of notes. I'm just going to type a great article. But in terms of marking up the PDF and then sharing those markups with others, Zotero doesn't, you don't open up the PDF in Zotero, it just will open it up in your PDF reader. And then you can do all your markups in there and save it. But I do not know if those will be shared with others. That is something I'd have to get back to you about. And I will, any questions that I don't know and I'm going to be looking up, I'll be sharing with everybody. But good question. So another feature that I wanted to show for Zotero was how to find a PDF for an item that might be available. So for example, for this one here, just go double check. I already have a PDF for it. So I'm going to try this one over here. If you don't have a PDF attached to an article, you can try and find to see if there's an available PDF by right-clicking and then find available PDF. And this can take a little bit of a long process and not always successful. So I generally recommend to use either the Zotero plugin so that it'll just bring in the PDF when it's added. Or, oh, it did find a version. So for this one, and then it just added it for me, which is nice. So, and you'll notice that in my previous library for the presentation one, I do have a duplicate here. So how you remove duplicates or notice duplicates is that in the left-hand side column, there's a duplicate items. And this is bringing up all the duplicate items across all of my folders in my whole library. So to remove those duplicates, you're going to click on any set of the duplicates and you're going to merge those two items. And you can choose which version you want to be the master. So, or the primary version of for the record that you're going to keep. So this is probably going to be the one that has the most information or the most correct information that you're going to want to keep. And then press merge to items and just keep on going down the list of any duplicates. So this was the duplicate that I just added. I'm going to go ahead and merge those two items. So now when I go back into my presentation, I now only have a single item there. So you can also create group libraries. To create a group library, you need to do that online. So when you are on your web library, to get to groups, it's just in the top menu and select groups. And it'll bring you to this page and you want to create a new group. I'm just going to log in again. And this is where you can choose what type of group you're going to want. Generally, most instances, I assume that you're probably going to want a private group. And you'll need to choose a name, and then you'll create the group and add people to it as you wish. And all of the group members that you add will get an email about it. It'll also show up in their Zotero inbox an invitation to join the group. Any questions about those features? And I should also add that for the groups, once you have a group library, it's just the same process of drop and drag to be able to add citations to that group, as well as you can use those same import methods that we mentioned earlier for just adding it to a particular collection in your library. All right, so there's a question in the chat about if you invite someone, would they already have to have Zotero? And the answer is yes. So they would need to create a Zotero account to be able to access that group library. That's a good question. But one thing to keep in mind is if you are working with somebody that does not use Zotero, but you want to send citations to them, how you would do that is you can go to File, Export Library, and then Export RIS. And that's going to export your whole library. But say, for example, that I just wanted to export the ones that I have saved in this collection. So I'm just going to do on PC, it's click the first item, Shift, select the rest of them. Mac, I believe it's a similar process, but a different shortcut key. Right click, and then export items. So this is just exporting the ones that I have selected, and I'm going to choose RIS format. And then, and you can have it choose if you want to export files as well. So if you have any PDFs attached to that, that's one way that you can sort of send it en masse. And it's going to create an RIS file or a zipped folder if you're attaching files to it, and then share that with whoever you need to. And the reason that I choose RIS is because RIS format is a citation format that's accepted by all citation managers that I know of. So it makes it easy for anybody that you're working with to bring in those citations on their end. So now the last part I wanted to show today was how to actually put that citation into a document. So I quickly showed how to do it earlier, but there's just a couple other things that I wanted to demonstrate. So previously I added just a little bit, just a single citation. Now I'm just going to bring over just some text just to show you sort of what it might look like in a scenario. These are just some instructions. But say, for example, that I have another citation that I want to add at the end of the sentence. And there's actually two citations that I want to add. So I have a couple on grant writings. So I can type in anything that I want, whether it's a name. Previously, I had part of a title. There. And then you can type in as many names as you want. They don't even need to be in the right alphabetical order. So it'll automatically reorder them alphabetically for you if that is important for the style that you're using. I'm using APA, and it is. And it'll do all of the correct shortening of for the in-text citation, as well as you'll notice that previously for my bibliography or works cited section that I have here, it's automatically added all of those citations in the correct order with the correct formatting for me when I just added them to the text above. If at any point you need to change the citation style that you're using, so it's very easy to do this with Zotero. You would go into document preferences and then choose a different citation style that you're interested in. So for example, maybe I need to switch to cell style, press OK. And here it has reorganized everything correctly. But say, for example, that I am looking through the different citation styles and I don't see the one that I want. You can manage styles. And sorry, decided to hide itself. And it's just showing the ones that I currently have for Zotero. But if I want to add additional ones, you can press Get Additional Styles. And this will bring you to their style repository where you can search for any style that you're interested in. So say, for example, I wanted the New England Journal of Medicine. I would click on it and it has added it to my list of styles, press OK. And then when I go back to my document preferences, I'll see that it's available. I can click it and press OK to match that new style. Are there any questions? All right, there's a question. When writing papers, we often work initially in Google Docs, then move to Word or vice versa. Does Zotero work smoothly when transitioning between Google and Word? For example, if we start a draft citations in Google Doc, then download a document as a Word file, can we add more citations and further format citations when we're doing the final edits in Word? That is a good question. This is something that I have never tried before. I do know that they do have a plugin for Google Docs. So I'm just going to pull up just a blank Google Doc while we're waiting. And I already have the Zotero plugin as part of my Google Doc already. So I'm just going to type in some text here. Google Doc. First time that you're using it, you're going to want, it's going to ask if you provided access. Just allow. And I'm going to similar as when you're using the plugin for Word, it's going to ask you your document preferences. It's okay. Type in some text. So I'm just going to use some of the same ones that we were using previously. Just going to type in a few. And then a similar process for inserting the bibliography. You can also use the Zotero link at the top here. And then just add edit bibliography. It's adding it. So let's go ahead and test to see what happens when we change this into a Word document. Since we have a couple minutes here. So I'm going to File, Download as a Word. So so it's going to appear as Zotero.org links in the downloaded copy. It'll be interesting. To see what happens. So it looks like it added it, but I'm not sure. All right, so yeah, so in answer, it does break those links. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close the breakout room since we have people coming back in. All right, we're gonna give them the 60 seconds leave the room. All right. Hopefully we have everybody back. All right. So hope everybody was able to get a little bit of a deeper dive into Endnote and Zotero. All the information that we are talked about today is available in our scientific and scholarly writing guide, which I'm going to put a link to in the chat. And so if you have questions about or want the link to how to download the different reference managers, go check out this guide, as well as some of the videos and training resources put together on the citation managers. So this seminar is part of a seminar series that we have on scholarly communications and data management. So, and the next few seminars are going to be all about data. So kicking off with our research data management seminar, February 16th during Love Data Week, followed by a workshop on cleaning data in OpenRefine, then finding data in June, and then closing with 3 separate workshops on data visualization in Excel, R, and Python in July. So mark your calendars and stay tuned for more info. Kim, would you mind putting a link to our workshops listing in the chat for the LibGuide? Thank you. And here is our contact information. If you have any questions and don't remember our names, if you click on the red Ask Library button anywhere on the library website, your question will be forwarded to one of us or another librarian who can answer your question. We also greatly appreciate any feedback you have. So if you could take a minute to fill out this 2-question survey, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm just putting that link in the chat now. Thank you so much for joining us today. We do have a few minutes, so Kim and I will be staying on if you do have any questions that you would like us to answer right now. Thank you so much.